All right. Show has started. We are live. How's audio? Looks good. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, doing well. A lot of mixed stuff in my neighborhood because we have a holiday weekend this week in Canada, but the actual holiday is not till next week. So it's people were confused. Some people were celebrating on my street last night. I got invites this morning to go to celebrations for next weekend because we have Victoria Day weekend, which is usually towards the 24th of May. Uh,
It sounds like people are just having a good time partying and enjoying themselves, and you're getting invited. It doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world.
well, the weird thing is like, no, I don't know which day is the civic holiday, the civic Monday, right? So
Okay.
is it this Monday coming up or is it next Monday? Even my girlfriend, her job, they can't figure it out because even though um, the federal mandate has said, oh, it's going to be on the 20th, um, all the other places that celebrate it are saying, oh no, it's 27th. So it's like Canada's the odd duck out. just
Right.
yeah, throwing everybody off. But outside of that, pretty good. How are you doing? I know you got a new setup going on. How's that holding up?
No, it's actually now it's my old setup. What happened was is that I actually had my usual setup. Parts of it were in my car, and then I was somewhere and I suddenly realized that. So I used my other setup, which I have another microphone and another setup that I use. But then I was missing parts from there. So then I actually ran to my car, came back, and then made it work. So yeah.
Okay. Well,
So yeah, everything is back to normal. That's the bottom line is that it's all back to normal.
that's good. All right, that's good. Seems like everybody we got the 5x5 out in the chat, which is good. So, all right, let's get on with today's script. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, everybody, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is The Price of Reason. Here we go, man. We've got 20 episodes. This is episode 20.
Yeah. And I feel like isn't this my third one?
It feels like I think it might have been your third one. Yeah, I think.
I can't remember if I did two or three of these. It sure feels like three, but there was one guy who was kind of a bum that sat around and his girlfriend left him, and it
Yep.
was like something meant about Mary, but with a bum.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Man, and oh yes, and then there was some girl that wanted to get accepted into colleges, so she did some naughty things.
Right.
So it was two different ones. So this is the third
This is
one.
your third one. Yeah.
I don't even remember the script's name. It's like bum with girlfriend and naughty college student perspective.
But you know what? That's actually good. That's a good kind of average response because with the amount of stuff you read when you do this in Hollywood for a living, you things blur together. You only pick up certain memories of things, and you know when a script is good when you can remember a lot of it after so many weeks have passed or even a couple of months. I myself,
Yeah.
they're of the 19 scripts we have reviewed thus previously, plus some of the bonus episodes, it's like there's only maybe a couple I can think of offhand that I'm like, yeah, that was a pretty good one. Of course, the Bad Boy, the dog script that we did a few weeks ago, that was amazing. And then there's one on the Patreon called Yumi, which I thought was pretty cool. So I mean, those are the two for sure. We do have a couple of double green lights as well, but again, those kind of fade into the background as you're constantly reading scripts every week. But we've got an interesting one uh, this week for you all, guys. This one, of course, is from the 2023 Blacklist. It placed 35 with 11 votes, and a lot of you guys, if you're listening, you might think, well, didn't last week have 11 votes? Yes, there's a lot of screenplays that were tied for 11 votes, and they're all in. I guess their order is kind of random, so between 20 to 35 or what have you. So it's peculiar that we have that many ties with that level of votes. But this one is one of them. It's called Backcountry, and it's written by Kevin Sheridan. And Price, you wanted to do the synopsis or the log line? Log line, right?
Uh, I'm cool with doing either. I thought you wanted the log line and I
Oh,
would do the
oh yeah, I'll do
synopsis,
the log
but
line. I'll set you
but
up for the log line. Sorry, I
it
spaced out there for a moment.
I am willing to do either or. I can do both of them, and I'm going to sound equally as douchey when I do either of them.
Okay. Well, with the log line for Backcountry, a fallen extreme skier and a rising star tackle a deadly mountain in secret. Disaster strikes, and he must conquer his past to save their lives. Um, Regale us with a synopsis, Price.
Synopsis. Once the future of sorry, once the future of extreme skiing, Brooks Province has approached to ski the mountain that nearly ended his life 2 decades ago. This time, alongside a young skier on the brink of stardom. But when disaster falls, Brooks must overcome his past and accomplish the impossible in order to save the lives of those he loves most.
Well, yes. So this is like another sports script that we got this so far this during this series. Um, the whole idea of extreme skiing doesn't really resonate with me well, but I was kind of fascinated with the conflict and challenges of this script. What were your initial thoughts, Price, when you finished reading this script, which is only about 106 pages, so it wasn't a slog, which was nice for a thriller of this
For,
type.
First of all, I was happy that it wasn't longer. I didn't think that I needed more of this specifically, at least in the creative direction that it went. I felt like it did what it did,
Mhm.
and it moved along. If I had to, I mean, I think it's early. How many of my thoughts do you want, and specifically about what at this point?
Initial thoughts is fine, and we'll just go from there. See where the conversation leads us.
Initial thoughts is that I like that there's something very kind of specific that it's about. You have some people. It's a field of extreme skiing. You have a guy who's sort of the past of that sport or whatever you want to call it. There's a guy who's sort of the future of it, and I think that there's something interesting there. And even though it's not that I am a big fan of watching skiing or skiing in general, I can appreciate it. It's just the same way as when I watched the movie Cliffhanger. It's not like I was taking interest on how I can climb snowy mountains, but once I was watching it, I was totally immersed in the story that was happening. And I feel like when it comes to this extreme skiing, even though it's not necessarily the thing that I dream of doing every second, there's a way to make it interesting for people, even quote unquote ski normies like myself, I suppose.
Yeah. See, that was one of the things. I thought the setting was really cool, and it's a familiar danger level. Like we know the consequences and associated with this type of sport, not just in the generals of, oh, if you miss a jump or you hit something, you're done. You're waking up next to Sonny Bono going, hey, I got you, babe. Um, Maybe a little off kilter of a bad joke, but regardless, I mean,
No,
um,
it's okay.
you have the you have a setup here, but with I think kind of what I took from this is that it's got a very limited but suitable appeal for an audience. Like this would be a good low budget kind of thriller for those that like extreme sports or skiing, or have a little bit of Schadenfreude to those people that participate in such things, because I thought a lot of the descriptions and a lot of the setups and some of the pacing and some of the suspense was quite well crafted in this. For me, what was lacking was the characters. Um,
Y-
I don't know about you, but for me, I couldn't give two F's about these people, any of them.
I, I tend to agree with you. I didn't know if this was the place to address that yet, but what I'll say is that in the script, it's like you said, when they were talking about the scenes, describing the more key extreme action scenes and things that were going on, they're like boom, and they're doing all these even noises in the description, but you totally get what they're saying and how it's supposed to play out, even with the sounds. They're like swoosh, kaboom, and all these like weird things, but you get exactly what they're going for, and you kind of can envision, even if you're not an expert in the sport, you kind of envision the type of challenges and situations they're facing. And in that sense, I think the movie does it okay. What I will say is, and I'm not going to get into any spoilers, there's a few parts in the movie where there's a guy called Brooks, there's this guy called Zach who's the young guy,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also Zach's father, there's his Brooks' sister, her husband, and there's something that, because things are happening, people may or may not be in danger. And at that point, it's like you just said, you kind of realize how much you don't really know much about these relationships, about these characters or anything. So you don't really care that much if they. I don't want to say that you don't care much if they live or die, but there's nothing really.
At
I
stake.
didn't feel. Yeah, the stakes are low in that sense, and there's one part specifically where, I again, no spoilers, some very specific things happen, and I'm just like, okay, well, maybe this person is dead. And, oh, well, yeah, maybe he is, maybe he isn't,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't really sweating it one way or another, which is probably not a good sign, but at the same time, the script, it's not offensive or anything. There's some interesting, if you like this type of extreme sports or even enjoy, even if you're not a fan of this specific sport, I'm sure a good director showing us a lot of these things can show us something very cool. When I saw Gran Turismo, it's not that I was so excited about, whatever it is that goes on there, but I enjoyed the racing. It's nice to see on screen. Sometimes there's something that you wouldn't participate in normally, but there's still a nice way to present it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the movie has the option to do that. But it's like you said, the relationships aren't great.
No, because the premise I felt was kind of weak. Because we opened up the script with Brooks watching old video footage of him, half his age, because he's in his like 40s, so he's in his early 20s in this video footage, and he's doing this really dangerous mountain, and
Right.
I think it's somewhere in Colorado or near. It's somewhere around the Aspen area because this is where all this. It's like a skiing town, and he's watching his failure, which is he just wipes out and he breaks pretty much almost every bone in his body. He's recovered, he survived, but he's got scars and he hasn't done professional skiing since. Apparently, it was a career ender. Not in the sense that he didn't try to get back into it. It's just that he kept on wiping out and crashing, and so he was just no longer suitable for it. Tons of money lost as a result of that. And now he's this guy in his 40s. He's happily married. He has a wife that's very passionate about him, and he's got a 12-year-old daughter who is also likes to ski as well. And that's what they do for fun, just recreational skiing, nothing big, challenging, or anything of that point. But he works as basically a warehouse manager at a Costco, which I thought was really familiar to what we read a few weeks back with Pumping Black, where the guy who's like, the extreme sports hiker and all that stuff, he's working at a warehouse shop, or he's getting an offer to work at a warehouse shop of sorts.
They all end up at Costco, I
Yeah,
guess.
and then they all end up at Costco, and then they end up getting this new opportunity, which is that while he's skiing with his kid, he bumps into an old competitor named Rick, who has a 16-year-old son who is a savant on the slopes, and his son wants to do this dangerous mountain, the mountain that Brooks nearly killed himself on, and obviously the Brooks is like, yeah, no, I promised my wife I'd never go do it. Why would I want to put myself through that? It's dangerous. It's not many skiers can actually pull it off. But Rick says, listen, if you don't, my son's going to do it. My son, Zach, he's this savant. He's going to ski it on his own or not. I'd rather have you there because if something does happen, I know he'll be safe with you. And it's really just like tons of refusal of the call until we find out that Brooks is not doing financially well. He's got a low-paying job. He's got a garage roof that's leaking, and he's got another leak somewhere else in his house.
And his daughter wants to go to college, and how's he going to pay for that?
Yeah, his daughter, who's 12, is already thinking about college, and she's
Right around the corner.
exactly. It's only 5 years away, and she's she's kind of mitigating the idea that she really wants to go or not because she knows that her family can't afford it. And the name of this mountain is called Alder Mountain, which I don't think is a real place, but I think is a term used in skiing for, a dangerous set of slopes or what have you. Um, but yeah, he keeps on refusing until Rick, who we find out he owns his own skiing shop. He's done well in real estate. He's got a lot of money. He starts offering him like $70,000, and he says no. Then he offers him like 150, and he says no. And then he offers him even more, and he finally says, "Okay, but don't tell my wife." and
Right.
and he and Brooks and Rick's son Zach kind of hit it off as friendship because Zach and them are very much alike. And here I'm thinking in the back of my mind, okay, are they going to reveal that Zach is really Brooks's son? Like he slept with a woman who Rick ended up marrying, a few months later, and she found out she was pregnant. She just faked. Is there going to be some sort of conspiracy behind this this plot? No, there's none. It just happens to be the case that the Rick's son is actually Zach's, and Zach is really just really great at skiing. It's in the blood. He just happens to be better than his father and pretty much better than Brooks. And so they arrange a way to do this mountain, this Alder Mountain, without Brooks's wife or daughter knowing. And in order to, I guess, make it profitable for Rick and Zach, they film it so that they can sell it to like Red Bull or some other sponsorship program, so that he can have his free ride. And so Brooks recruits his sister and her husband Teddy, and Teddy is Brooks's best friend. So we've got our team that's going to go to Alder Mountain and videotape everyone skiing down this dangerous mountain to impress potential sponsors. And that is our setup. And I don't know about you, Price, but to me, I'm thinking it's kind of contrived and it's not empathetic, and I don't care. I don't care that a 16-year-old kid is so determined that he's going to ski down this slope, and a very, very steep slope on this mountain, all because he feels like he has to do it. And here I am thinking, yeah, that's not the best reason to do that. Like there's got to be something else. There needs to be that something extra to say, like, listen, this is the one thing that's going to let me either qualify for a race that I really want to compete in. I want to go to Olympics, go to any other type of ski competition. And the only way to do that is to make sure I can be the best. And the only way to prove that I'm the best is to do this mountain. And if I don't do that, all the years of my training, all the money my parents put behind me, it's all going to be squandered off, and I'm going to be a failure. And that can maybe reflect on Brooks, who it'd be better if he established, yeah, his parents sunk a fortune into his practice, his training, and everything he did. And then when he wiped out and couldn't compete anymore, he's now been burdened with that debt that he's been trying to pay off ever since. And now this is the one out where he could. We're missing some sort of angle. I mean, money is a very easy one that people can relate to when it comes to stakes and consequences. But I felt like this one here was it was all ego driven, or super ego driven, if you want, as opposed to, yeah, I kind of wish that these guys were able to do what they wanted to do. And yeah, that's kind of like what I saw here. Is it just didn't feel like it like it hooked me.
Even if they would have gone through to the trope of he has the most potential of any skier ever, but he kind of has a bad attitude. He gets into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he hangs out with the wrong. This is really like cliche, like wrong crowd or doing something stupid. And the father wants a more positive coach and role model in his life, or even that would have been a little more heartfelt. This guy just popping up and like saying like, "Hey, I'll give you $75,000. No, I can't do that. Okay, here's 100. No, I can't do that. Here's more. All right, okay, but don't tell anybody." It's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
Even Lifetime Movie of the Week would have given some kind of, like you said, with a kid being his son, some romance, anything thrown into the mix, just to make this a little more personal. And yes, I agree. Like, it's contrived, and it's not very personal, and that is probably the biggest weakness here. But not everything about it is weak. But this angle isn't great.
I would say the inciting incident is kind of weak because, I give props to the writer for trying to basically have Rick, the father, saying, like, this is his one way to reconcile what his son wants and him being supportive of his son, because his son is going to do it with or without him, and he'd rather have him do it with him. And the best way that he can see him doing it with his son is to get one of the best skiers he's ever known to help, and who also happens to be a hero of Zach's as well, to help him.
Maybe
Yeah.
I've solved it. I think I know how. Again, these are all very cliche tropey, but sometimes they still work. This guy, instead of being his old frenemy or whatever it is, it's a guy from his past that back in the day they skied together and they were buddies or whatever it is. He comes in, he's coaching. He's now an extreme sports coach. He has this team of people that he coaches. This guy, in his eyes, is the biggest talent he's ever seen. But he just has such a problem, like I said, an attitude problem, and he tries like to nudge Rick out of retirement, that he's doing his Costco thing, whatever, to come teach this kid. And he says, listen, don't you remember you were like that? Somebody like that with so much confidence is bound to make a mistake. Look what happened to you. Maybe this is a second chance for you.
Yeah.
Maybe now you can, something like that. And like, instead of we were kids, I hated you, we didn't hate. On the contrary, they're friends, and this guy's appealing to him and saying, forget about all this Costco. There's a kid that needs you. If we're not careful, he's going to end up like this, and you can stop it. You can be the coach. You can be the make him the skier that you never were. And that, even as dumb as this sounds, what I just said, already makes me feel something more than this movie made me feel in that sense.
Yeah, and then orbit a little bit around that so that we understand the relationship to these two guys, because before they do the mountain in the script, we get something that's okay, where Brooks and Zach kind of do a run somewhere, and it's a run that Brooks has done over and over again, and then Zach ends up going off on his own trail and does something that Brooks has never seen before, which the script tells us is impressive, and I will take its word for it. And then that's kind of what convinces Brooks that Zach could probably handle this mountain, even though he really doesn't want to do it. And I was thinking, this was like your, tip of the iceberg, so to speak, moment, where I'm like, if we got a little bit more of that, and then maybe a little bit more of some sort of connection between Brooks and his family, because we get a couple of brief scenes with him and his daughter where, there's kind of something there, but it's not really explored. And then we get like maybe 2 scenes with with Brooks and his wife.
I'm going to go more cliche.
Normal.
I have an idea.
Okay.
I have an idea. More cliche, but heartstrings, and it'll work. This Brooks guy, he had a daughter. She passed away of some illness or something. This kid is some guy. He's either an orphan or something like that. He's a wild card. He has an attitude problem, but he's the best darn skier that ever lived. And now he now is his mentor, and in a way, like, him helping him overcome the thing gives him that fatherly feeling. And this kid didn't have like a family or something like that. I know I'm saying it, and you're probably like all like smirking of how stupid and cliche it is. Even this would have been more effective than what we got in the movie.
It would have, yeah, and you're not wrong. I mean, this is the part we're probably going to dwell on this a little bit more, because again, the opening act is kind of the weakest of it. And
right.
And it because it's so weak, and this is a great lesson for everyone listening if you're getting into writing, is that you really want a strong opening act so that everything that builds up in the subsequent acts, Act 2, Act 3, has a lot more meaning, has a lot more substance to it. I would argue in this script it's kind of a little bit inverted. It's got a weak opening act, but the second act is really strong. Would have been stronger if the character connections were there, because this is what your first act is supposed to do: build up your character, understand the relationships, understand the stakes, and then you throw them into the fire for the second act. And then the third act and the climax is where they kind of crawl their way out, and either they're victorious or they fail. And I think that's kind of where this script struggles, is that we're just not getting those great connections. We're getting bullet points essentially of things that should be driving empathy, but we're not seeing, the sword of Damocles lowering closer and closer to the head of our main character in this opening. Like, we don't understand the urgency. We don't understand why he has to say yes to this proposal, and the arguments put forth to compel him to do so are, I would say, very, very weak.
And because I also brought up that the daughter is no longer with him, the daughter, like the whole way she's used in the movie to me is kind of weak. I never really buy into this thing. That's why getting rid of her and making some kind of void in his life, that his career went bad, but also that he failed as a family man or as a father,
Hmm.
even though it's probably something that he couldn't control, let's say. But let's say the fact that he has more baggage or more something to that he's dealing with, he's really like a shell of a man, and then he has to help this guy who's like the most difficult and aggravating and annoying teenager, whatever he is, twerp, but somehow they manage to form a bond. I think that that would work.
No, I think you're hitting something that's right on the head. Is that between all the characters that we follow throughout this story, there is no real conflict between them. They've all got
Right.
the same kind of goal in line. Nobody's pushing back. Nobody's arguing. It's very lacking of drama, and I think that's where we don't learn enough about them because we're not seeing them in the heat of conviction for what they want to do and what they're trying to do. It's all like,
One
okay, this is our plan. Yes, okay, you convinced me. Let's do it. Now we're all in sync, and now we're just watching a bunch of people having fun in sync, going down this mountain, videotaping it, and yeah, excited for what could be in the future. And it's like, well,
you,
this is
you
your first act. I'm not buying the premise yet.
it kind of reminded me of, how sometimes you have a horror movie franchise and then maybe there's the first one that's interesting,
Hmm.
but then you have about five, six that are like the first one over and over again. And you already feel like, for example, in Friday the 13th,
Hmm.
the fact that the counselors would be coming back another year to that lake, uh, and it feels so clinical. You're watching the movie because everybody knows that this is just some dumb, contrived thing to have these people here. Potentially, some of them are going to die, maybe a lot of them, and you're just waiting to see it all happen. It's sort of this feeling that something bad is going to happen. You're just going to see all this stuff that's bad that's happening. And while this movie isn't a horror movie, and I wouldn't say that it's as bad as those things, but basically the real selling point of the movie is that there's an avalanche and there's people there and you don't know who's going to make it and who's not,
Right.
and that's really what that's all they're really trying to capitalize on. They have I've seen like naughty movies that have more interesting setups than this.
Yeah, that's the other part too. I mean, while I'm reading this script, and I'm thinking, okay, well, there's only really because you have so many characters. There's only really one conflict you can provide to them where they all get affected by it, and that's going to be the cliched avalanche, which I was not upset with. I thought, okay, that's good. I want to see how they do it, and we get this really great set piece where when they realize that the avalanche is coming, they're trying to outski it. They're racing down. I
Yes,
think Teddy is on a
that's the
snowboard.
best part. That's probably the best part of the whole script. That's the one I'm like, oh, okay, something's happening.
Yeah, and here's the other part too, which I thought was brilliant, is that they all know that they're going to be basically enveloped by the avalanche. So they're pulling on these avalanche protection chutes, which is like a pouch in a pocket that's supposed to protect their head and neck and help make sure that if they're buried, they've got an air pocket because they have to cover their face as well. And I like all the technical aspects of it because I thought, okay, this convinces me to make it very authentic of an experience. Um, but then they do something which is a little bit stretches credulity for me because again I've grown up in Canada. I've seen every type of snow there's ever been, and there's a lot of the times where they're trying to convey that the snow is as dense as concrete, and I'm like, yeah, it can be pretty. You can get some really good packing snow there, but if by the time it's dense as concrete, that's just ice. So just call it ice. If it's ice, don't call it snow because it's not the same. Because you can get dense and you can get heavy, but it's still vulnerable to a lot of things that like your hot breath. If you pee on it, it will melt. Even in very cold weather, it will melt a little bit. Rarely has it been ever so cold that as you're in midstream, it freezes in the middle. So yeah, there are certain parts there where I'm like, okay, you're playing up the drama. I get it. It's you got your ice, you got your sleet, you got your dense packing snow, you got your soft powder, and then you've got like the brisk cold that's kind of freezing everything around you quickly. Um, it just felt like they were trying to build up the extra amount of conflict where all you really have to worry about is just the weight of the snow itself. Like when you got a couple feet of snow on you, even though it's light and fluffy and it's and not as dense, it's still really heavy. It piles up. And I think they should have played on that more as opposed to so many freaking references to it being like concrete. Like it was just peppered throughout the entire second act.
I feel like this script is a guy that somebody he got up one day. What's his name? Already forgot his name. Kevin. What's his name?
Kevin Sheridan.
I feel like Kevin Sheridan woke up one morning and he thought, wouldn't it be so cool if I filmed an avalanche and all these people were getting struck by snow and they're all fighting for their lives? Wouldn't that be cool? And then he just said, I'm going to just build a whole script around this one idea that I just thought up in my mind. And that's why everything is kind of contrived. And even when he does the thing, it's kind of over the top. But I don't mind it if at least I understand that you're saying that's inaccurate with the snow. I would have let it all slide if he would have built this up in a way that you actually care more about the people involved once it happens, because it is cool to look. If you're a good director and you have a good setup and it's done in a nice way, I think that this would get viewers interested.
Yeah, I think that would have been the case. Part of me feels if you're going to do a movie about an avalanche and surviving an avalanche, the more dramatic aspect, even though it might be cliche on the surface, would be it's a rescue team getting someone that's trapped on a mountain and then they get hit by an avalanche. So now it's not just that they have to get out of the avalanche, they still have to rescue the people that are in peril, right? So then you have that ticking clock aspect and you have the urgency and you've got people that are, typically prepared for these types of events, but then they're just overwhelmed by the sheer amount of snow that came down upon them. And they also have no idea if the avalanche affected the people that they're going to rescue, or if they were like spared it, because avalanches aren't a 360-degree down on a mountain. It's usually in a section or so. So I was just constantly, like, my mind kept on drifting while reading the script, thinking like there's just more empathetic and more higher stakes situations that could be used with this premise than what we're getting. Because on the surface level, if someone were to see this as a movie and watch it casually, they would look at it like, okay, here's a bunch of people that are essentially elites. One is financially struggling a little bit, but I can ignore that. And they're predicated their entire wealth on skiing, and now their arrogance has led to them being, engulfed by an avalanche. And I'm not seeing a connection that makes them say, I hope they get out of this. It's more like, well, they kind of brought this on themselves.
I couldn't help but think when I saw this, when I read this script, there is the only time that I've ever seen something like this, although it's many years ago since I've seen this movie, and I could barely. I remember generally what happens there. There was a movie called Avalanche. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am a little familiar with it. It came out around the same time as Alive, right?
No, I think this may be older. I mean, this is like 70s. It has like Rock Hudson.
Oh, yeah. Late 70s one. Right.
Yeah, there's something there that he's... now, I can't see an image of him in the movie. I just looked and I see like a poster. But I think he has a mustache in there. Am I right? Is that the one that he has a mustache? Anyhow, that one, and this I did remember. After all those years, I remembered there was a situation that he had some woman that she was his wife, but they separated, and he invited her and a bunch of other people to some resort. He was like a resort manager, and then there's this big avalanche and how people deal with it. I actually felt that one made more effort to build the relationships. It understood that you have the avalanche, but they created even that stupid thing that it's a husband and wife, that their marriage is on the rocks. Even that, as dumb as it sounds, it's at least something.
Yeah. That's the other part too, is because we get into the avalanche really early on into the second act,
right?
And then we go through each character's journey of survival, starting with Brooks, because he finds a way to dig himself out, and we've got I do like the indication timer that they have, because it's basically saying, well, how much time do you have to survive in an avalanche typically, and it's on average it's 25 minutes is your best window. And he gets out after like 5 minutes, and then Rick finds him, and they're beaten to hell. Like, some of them have broken arms or a dislocated shoulder, and they're using their beacons to try and find everyone else. Zach is found. He's missing his shirt and jacket. Somehow, I guess the snow and everything that he ripped the top half of his clothes to shreds. So then, obviously, the dad hands over his jacket to his son. They find Teddy buried under a big pine tree that they're not going to be able to lift off him together yet because it's just too heavy. So now for most of the second act, it's a search for Brooks's sister Annie, and they're coordinating and they're trying to find her. And I thought this was really well written, good intensity, especially as the time passes the 25-minute marker and it's getting closer and closer to the hour marker. And they're wondering, is she going to make it? Like, how much air could she possibly have? How deep is she? How far away is she? Like, all these great questions that are leading into, like, oh, what's going to happen to Annie? And while I'm reading this over, I'm thinking these are all great little suspense plot points here. But the one thing it's missing is that I don't know enough about Annie to care if she lives or dies.
In a short amount of time, they bring too many characters into the fold. They're like, well, you have Teddy, you have the guy's sister, there's the daughter, there's the wife, there's Rick, there's his son. It's just, I feel like they just throw all these people on screen and hope that somehow you'll immediately have some kind of sentiment and feeling. It plays almost like a Hallmark movie in that sense. Very on the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of does. It just doesn't feel like it's missing that extra depth. But it's the thing that bothered me, because I'm like, this is actually a really good set piece. Like, all these things play out well. The only thing missing is the fact that I don't know anything enough about Annie.
You were suggesting that the Zach kid would be his kid, and there's maybe a love triangle, some woman that never said that he was the father. That would have been a little more interesting. I think that,
I was thinking more like a serial killer level thing, where the dad finds out that his son that he's been raising is not really his, that his wife, before they got married, slept with, Brooks, and even though it was a one-night stand, when she started dating Rick, she finds out she's pregnant. She just lies to Rick to say that it's his. They get married, and now he's like, now his wife is like, they've established that his wife has passed away. And I'm thinking, well, like, what if he finds out that his son is not really his? That's why he's such a better skier, and that's why he's envious and hateful and resentful to him. And he's like, I'm going to encourage or manipulate these two to get on that mountain where where Brooks almost died, and get rid of both of them. And I'm like, oh, that would be dark, but I don't think the writer's going to go in that
very
direction.
Dark, but at least interesting.
But it'd be very interesting, right? Like, a dude that feels like he's lost like 20 years of his life because he dedicated it to this woman that betrayed him. Or not so much. Yeah, betrayed him in the sense that she lied about something, and now he's in his late 40s, and what does he have to show for it? Well, he's raising He was raising the enemy of his kid, and he also doesn't really like his kid, but he pretends to, and he just wants to get rid of both of them and do something else. I mean, like, again, it's a little weak, but it's also very dramatic. In this case here, we got none of that.
I mean, add in some cheesy violins and it could be a Lifetime movie of the week.
It would definitely be like a thriller you see on A&E or something.
Right. I understand. No, it could be even better. Not that there's anything wrong with Lifetime movie of the week. Women like that kind of stuff. But AMC thriller or movie of the week, certainly.
There you go.
Certainly
yeah.
That.
Or on FX.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times when you have those kind of TV movies, you're just a little bit more forgiving. You kind of know that they didn't...
you know that there's a lot of limitations, and they got to reconcile that to the best they can, and they're trying to entertain you, and they're trying to make a connection. And
right. But even they have the cheap tricks that they use of, like, he's the father of the thing, the triangle. Mm-hmm. There's like cheap storytelling tricks that those people that make those kind of more TV movies, that maybe they're not the best writers and they don't really know what they're doing, but they have those tropes that they know how to work with. And I think that this script probably could have used some of that kind of approach, because as it is, there's just not a lot there story-wise.
Yeah, and that comes down to the characters. The characters are just not fleshed out enough. I mean, when they find Teddy and they're like, hey, and he's like, where's Annie? They're like, we haven't found her yet. And he's, terrified that he's going to lose his wife. And I can't connect with him like I could with other scripts before, where there's a spouse in danger, because we've got to know those characters. We know and understand the relationship. We see what they're doing. Like, we don't even have, like, Teddy and Annie have been married for like a decade. They have no kids, so there's no additional consequences to the relationship either, right? There's no like
Right.
who's going to take care of our daughter or son. Is it going to be, Brooks's wife if they don't make it? In which case, she's like the godparent or what have you. Like there's nothing else there to give us a semblance that these characters are fully fleshed out. And I will say,
Or
yeah,
consolidate Rick and Teddy. Consolidate Rick and Teddy.
yeah,
He let's say Teddy was his brother, but at some point Annie, which was his sister-in-law in our version, he had a one-night stand with her, and now Teddy has a kid that he's like the expert. He's the best skier ever, and Teddy doesn't know that basically the brother is the father and not him. It's cheesy, it's weird, it's Lifetime
it's
movie of the week, but
melodrama.
you know
Yeah,
what? It's everything, but it still does something. It still makes you feel something.
yeah, it does. But yeah, like again, we could have tons of rewrite suggestions for this script
It's
because
almost
there's
like
a lot of
anything else.
potential. Yeah, there's a lot of potential in this part because again, mechanically speaking, structurally speaking, so much of this works. But this gun goes back down to character. It's like if the characters don't resonate, if they don't hook us, if they don't make us want to feel for them, all those cool set pieces, all those challenges that they overcome feel empty. And that's one of the things that really bothered me for this second act, because even while they're breaking out of this avalanche and they're rescuing each other and they're finding where Annie is and they're digging her out, we get this interrupted finally after like 10, 15 pages where we have Kara, Brooks's wife, and her daughter decide, oh, we're going to go skiing to the general slopes that we go to all the time. It's a half day, snow day, a storm's coming in, all that jazz. And while she's out on the slopes, she runs into other friends and family members and stuff, and they're like, yeah, we haven't seen Brooks at all today. He said he was going to be here. Oh, we should have seen him. And I'm thinking, okay, that's kind of, is he that well known? Isn't this a big skiing town? Like, I've gone skiing before and snowboarding, and I rarely bump into people I know that are there when I know that they're there, because these are huge areas. I mean, it's not a
Yeah,
tiny
they make it
place.
seem like this is like a small this is like a community center or something like the
Like everyone bumps into each other all the time
right.
at every moment. Yeah.
Right, like some kind of, it's like Cheers or something, and it's not. I mean, you're right, it's a big space, mountains. It's the chances of them running into anybody and seeing anybody ski there in the morning. How would they know?
Yeah, like your best bet is like during dinner time at the cabins or whatever, or the resort part of the place, but not on the slopes or the hills or anything of that nature. And even then, the odds are still against you. I mean, I've gone on trips where I had no idea that my cousin was on the same trip, and we were snowboarding maybe 14, 15 yards apart. Never knew, because we were all in our gear and we're covered up, and you're not really talking to
How
the
would
person
you
next
know?
to you or not, right? You're just focused on going down the hill.
So about what you were saying, I agree with you. A lot of times in movies, I would say that you need kind of the characters, the relationships, and you need that structure. And it's strange that you have somebody that actually did a structure that makes sense, but couldn't get this most basic thing. And I'll say it one last time. He could have had a dartboard on his wall where he writes in every kind of slot of that dartboard just the silliest tropes, and he just would have taken like a dart and thrown it at it and plugged some of them in, and already his script probably would have, because this, like you said, the structure, the beats and the certain parts and the way it's built, and when the avalanche comes in, and the rescue, these are all things that are timed well, and I think that all move along in a way that seems reasonable. It's just that he couldn't tie it together with the most simple narrative ideas. It's kind of baffling.
Yeah, and the subplot of Kara working with Mountain Rescue to try and find the search for her husband.
Yeah, I could.
It was.
That was.
It felt like it felt slapdash. Like,
They wanted a girl boss. Sorry, they wanted a girl boss. So like they already from the early part of the script, they're like, she's a force to be reckoned with. It's like, I mean,
okay, yeah.
can you show me why she's a force to be reckoned with?
Well,
'Cause-
they do at the gas station when she needs to gets the
Right,
security camera
right.
footage to like, which direction did my husband go? And the guy's like, well, I don't have the key to that, and I'm not giving. I mean, and here's the other part too. immediately acquiesces to her when she says, "I need to do that." And I'm like, no, this is type of writing I used to see in television shows in the early 2000s where, the main character of the show comes in and he starts to talk to, he's investigating something. He starts to talk to some random schlub at a shop or something. And the guy that he's talking to is immediately afraid of the main character. And here I am reading the draft. I'm like, why is this dude at this shop afraid of the main character? He's never seen him before. Where's the logic? If anything, he's looking at him like a customer or just maybe some vagrant coming in. He's going to be a little difficult, a little resistant, or something of that nature. But instead, he immediately acquiesces, and that's what we have here. We have the gas station attendant sees Kara saying, "I need to see your security cameras," and he's just like, "Okay, but I don't have the key." And so she grabs a fire extinguisher and just busts down the door. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is not fun in the right sense of the word.
Instead of the wife, I would have preferred like another trope, against the grain police officer. Everybody tells him like, it's not, we can't now risk our people. We can't do this and that. And he's like, there's people out there. God darn it. I'm going to go get them. I don't care what you say. Move aside. And like, you know what I mean? Some kind of guy who like, against the odds, he wants to go send a search team or some dumb thing like that. At least you'd say, okay, now this guy, that's why he's doing all of this.
Like, there's a storm coming in. It's like, well, we can't fly our helicopters through the storm. It's like, you can't fly the helicopters through the storm. I can fly the helicopters through the storm. We're going. That type of guy. That's a good type of character. I mean, the irony of it is that even though they establish that Kara is this character that, is a force to be reckoned with, she's never in a helicopter. She's always kind of standing at the tarmac or at the rescue station. She's throwing out ideas, but like she's never actually involved physically with the rescue. And I'm like, okay, so now we've got a conflict here because you make her active at the gas station, but you don't make her active anywhere else. You have to figure out what's her role. Is her role the fact that she's someone who's very familiar with these hills? She can opt for places where her husband might be to search, and she could probably want to participate, but of course she has to be reined in by the authorities in the situation, and that can be a conflict because that would have been nice, but we didn't get any of that. Instead, she's just
we didn't get that either. She just stands around. Makes a lot of she makes noise, but she's not really doing anything. By the way, another route. How about these are so stupid, but I don't dislike them. How about that the cop that like not the cop, the mountain ranger cop? I don't know what it is that we need, some guy.
The mountain rescue team. Yeah,
random rescue. It's like an old crusty guy. And in the past, there was something that happened that he, there's an incident in his past that he didn't save somebody, but now like it's maybe a redemption for him. He's like, I'm not going to let anybody else down my watch or something like that. You know what I mean? So just anything.
There's so
anything
many,
at all.
I can see comedic tropes in this, like that mountain, the mountain rescue guy. There's the one person on this one mountain that he never found that he regrets. And then our team that was cut by the avalanche finds the frozen body of that guy. And then they use that frozen body to help dig themselves out of other parts of the mountain.
You know what? I already like that. It's interesting, at least. It's something. I like the idea that, well, most people have never made it back from an avalanche over there. Remember in 1973, there was this guy, and then they actually, even if they use him to dig them out or not, just finding him would already be like spooky and interesting. I already love it. Like that's already something. It's just little things like this don't exist, and I'm not saying that some of them exist and some of them don't, or some are better than others. They're just not there. It's like whoever wrote this thing, and nothing personal, Kevin, didn't have that additional thing to kind of spice up the script a little.
Yeah, like where's the plussing it out against others of this type, right? Like where's that strange attractor, that thing that says, "Oh, of all the avalanche-related skiing script thrillers out there, this is that one moment that makes this one the best, or this one stand out," and it didn't really have that in there.
Imagine I remembered that Rock Hudson had some wife thing, and I couldn't tell you a lot about the movie, but even I remember that there was some kind of thing with some wife that left him, but now she was here and he wanted her back, and like he didn't act there was an avalanche. I think he's responsible for not approaching it properly, and people may have died because of him. Even after all these years that I barely remember what that movie is about, that little thing still is in my memory because it's at least something.
Yes. This script, I will say this. One thing I'm definitely going to remember from this script, at least for a while, is when they find Annie's beacon and they realize that she's 7 feet under the snow, and they are just frantically digging and they don't know if she's alive or not. I'm like,
That was all
that was
right,
a
I
well
guess.
structured set of events that was written in there.
I will say though, in the script, they're like, it's a 1 in a million chance that this woman is alive, and like they keep digging, like there's no chance she's alive, and then they dig and they bring her out, and like she's at the end.
They have to
I mean,
give
I
her
don't
mouth
want
to
to.
mouth resuscitation, and they get a little bit of breath, and she's weak and she's battered and bruised, but she's clinging to life,
Right,
by her
but
fingernails.
I'm just saying they kind of prepare for something, and then they're kind of I don't know. It's very weird, but
It is, and the other part too is like they've got the other setup. They've got a storm is coming, and then it's all like, okay, now they're just working away. Okay, they found everybody here. Everybody's kind of alive in various degrees of injury. Now they got to kind of get together, build some sleds, and try and safely make it back down the slope to the rest of civilization. And what I thought was kind of weird is how they split off into teams. So like Zach and Rick and Annie go in one team, and then Teddy and Brooks go in another. And I never understood why they did that. I mean, like, I didn't understand for the purpose of the script why they did that. I understood why the writer did that, because it then puts these two guys who are best friends, making their way down on their own terms. And I guess this is going to be the cutoff point where we can't spoil anymore. But as they're making their way, down the hill, another avalanche hits and it engulfs them. And we don't know what happens. Well, you guys in the chat don't know what happens. You guys listening won't know what happens to these two. But that's your tail end of your second act. While we're following the other three, not really all in that much detail, following them getting rescued on the tarmac, and then Kara freaking out that her husband has not been found yet, and Annie having no idea that Teddy and her brother Brooks are still trapped on the mountain.
yeah.
So I mean, I will say this: it's a very, very simple conflict in regards to man versus nature, which is fine. It just doesn't have the meat. And to your point earlier, I agree with you. I'm glad that it wasn't more than 106 pages, because there's nothing really more to expand upon on this. The other part that was also kind of disappointing is we never get really a follow-up from Zach, who's the whole reason why they're on this mountain in the first place, because he's felt like he had to conquer it. And now that it kind of conquered him, it's like, well, are you going to keep skiing, or are you going to...
I didn't get. Yeah, I didn't understand
what's
that
going
either,
on with
really.
this character, right? I mean, it's just... It's almost
That
like
was
he's
weird, too.
forgotten or decided to be pushed into the background. It was... And even for the stuff that's going on through Brooks, I mean, during themselves, when they're digging themselves out of the initial avalanche, there's several moments where each character is just calling upon every last ounce of strength and adrenaline that they've got over and over again, to the point where you're like, you've called on the last amount of strength like 2-3 times. They should be tapped out by now. It goes through a cycle of events.
I know. I know that this is a very different movie, but because there's snow, I couldn't help but thinking again of Cliffhanger.
Yeah,
And even Cliffhanger has a villain. First of all,
and
it
there's money
starts off.
involved.
What'd you say?
And there's a lot more money involved.
A lot more money involved. There's a villain, and not only that, the beginning scene where he drops that. That's not a spoiler at this point. When he drops the lady, that's an iconic scene.
Mm-hmm.
You may like that movie. You may not like that movie. That really brings you into the movie. That scene, as cheesy, whatever you want to call it.
It's cheesy.
You know
It
what
would
I'm
never
talking
happen
about, right?
like that in a million years, but
Never,
they sell it.
never have. They sell it really well. I mean, there's just something about that scene. It sells it, and you're like, okay, I'm in this movie. And then you bring John Lithgow. He's a villain, and hard not. You're watching something that's a bit silly, and yet there's something about it that's fun to watch. It's like it's that kind of thriller, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie doesn't have that flavor. This script.
Yeah, it doesn't have that extra it doesn't have that extra stake. It's really just they're on the mountain, an avalanche hits, now it's time for them to survive. All the other conflicts that have led up to this point were already resolved. So there's nothing more. There's no there's no moment where one of the guys deliberately tries to cause the avalanche because he wants to get rid of a rival. Like there's nothing extra there with this story. And
Totally.
it's like I see this and I'm thinking, okay, there's a lot of the structure's good, the prose is good, dialogue is okay, but we're missing like 10 pages of character development that could really make us actually care about these people. And I'm thinking you could cut 10 pages of Kara talking with Mountain Patrol and Mountain Rescue Patrol completely out because I don't care about them. It's almost like they're trying to do like those family films where people are looking for the kids trapped in the forest and they're like, okay, we have the search team going and we're going to be following them for a few minutes to really show and amp up the intensity and then show the catharsis of them finding one of the kids, and then eventually they find the other sets and then they bring them all home for that joyous celebration. This is what the script was trying to replicate that, but it just didn't feel useful. And
it's as if this Kevin guy saw a bunch of other movies and said he would take like different things that he saw there and put them here. He just chose pieces that don't quite connect together.
Yeah.
Which is weird because other pieces may have connected, but the ones that he chose don't.
Or he didn't find a way for it to make them work, because one of the things I dislike about those types of rescue scenes is that you're filled with a bunch of nameless characters that are just serving the function of, okay, you got the pilot, now you've got the the scanner, the guy with the binoculars, then you have the guy on the radio.
Right.
You have all these people that are just saying exposition to kind of move the story forward, and you got nothing really else happening as a result of that. I mean, part of me, I'm reading this, it's like, okay, they get out of avalanche. Man, you know what'd be awesome right now? As if like a Yeti came out to try and pick them off one by one or something, just... It's just like...
I feel like if we were given the script to rewrite, this script would have so much crazy stuff happening. We'd throw in like naughty women and grizzly bears, and I don't know what we'd throw in here, but there would be just more interesting things happening. Relationships, betrayals, anything.
Oh, okay, here's something that I'm reminded of from the script. The ice mirage, where Brooks is like, he's all alone and he's looking for something, or looking for everybody, and then all of a sudden it's describing like he's getting really, really hot, and the snow is melting away, and he's seeing the grass, so he starts taking off his jacket and his thermals, and then all of a sudden he collapses and he realizes, he's just having some sort of hallucination, and he's actually freezing to death again.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, why now? Okay, I don't know if this happens or not on the inverse side of things, because I've been very cold. I've been in situations where I've had to dig myself out or had to be dug out by people through not so much an avalanche of any huge proportion, but a whole bunch of snow falling on top of myself and my friends, in a very hilly park where it sometimes happens. And yes, there would be a panic of people trying to dig us out, but at the end of the day, it's like it's 2 feet of snow and it's heavy and we're 10-year-olds, we'll be fine. Just the urgency is not really there, but because parents and they care about children, they act that way. I was thinking, okay, is that a real thing? Like, I've never heard of that. If anyone else in the chat or listening has heard of the reverse mirage that you get in the desert for the snow, please share that with us, because that was kind of weird. And it also felt like, okay, now we're stripping him down just to make him more vulnerable. Feels like a little plot contrivance for me. And then he's like laying on the ground and hoping that the helicopter flies over and finds him. And we're seeing all these little peppered bits outside of the avalanche where people are like getting in. Like, there's that truck driver who gets hit by part of the avalanche, and he survives miraculously, and he reports that there's an avalanche on this mountain, but no one at the mountain rescue patrol decides to think, oh, of all the places we've been looking that don't have avalanches, this one place that does have an avalanche, we can't seem to find the people that are supposed to be on the mountains. Maybe they're trapped in the avalanche. Like, they don't make those connections of, like, let's just do a perimeter search real quick or see if there's any trace. Like, it was kind of like padding in that section of the script.
Yes.
And
I understand what you mean.
yeah, I mean, there's some it's a conflict because there's some stuff that I'm like, yeah, this is actually not bad, but then there's these other little bits on here where I'm thinking this doesn't need to be here, although it's well written, doesn't need to be here. Stripping down
Yeah,
Brooks to his shirt to just his ski pants, that doesn't make sense. That feels kind of an odd
out of the
choice.
three scripts that I've been here to talk to you about, I felt when I read this one, I wasn't suffering or annoyed while watching it. I just kind of felt like it was just kind of generic and could have been better. But there are surprisingly some ideas that I don't hate in it. I just wish they would have done it better. The other two there were parts of them that were annoying. I felt annoyed while reading those scripts. This one, I wouldn't say that I was annoyed. The only thing that maybe the slight annoyance is that there's something here, something that could draw audiences, something that could be a kind of blockbuster movie, but the writing here isn't strong enough for, like you said, of the characters.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it goes back to a very strong aspect of screenwriting is that you can have the worst plot in the world, but if you have characters that aren't interesting, nobody's going to care. And
Yeah, like As Good as It Gets. As Good as It Gets is basically, hey Jack, can you do something with this turd of a script? And he's like, sure, give me. And like he does it, and that's the whole movie. The movie without Jack Nicholson, I would probably, I don't know if I could get through it, and I wouldn't remember it 1 minute later. And even now, all I remember is that like Jack Nicholson is awesome.
he did another one shortly after that with Diane Keaton and Keanu Reeves, right?
I actually saw that one, and I'll tell you again that was another movie that was between you and me, very wobbly. I like Keanu Reeves. I don't buy that he's a doctor, surgeon guy, or whatever he was. Keanu Reeves did a lot of things with that doctor guy that was in love with Diane Keaton. Didn't buy it. I will say that, Jack Nicholson did his best to carry that one.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd agree there. Yeah, I mean, again, this is probably foretelling a little bit with regards to our script. We're seeing other examples of things that where the script failed, of how it's worked in practice and how it doesn't really resonate. And yeah, I mean, the script just does not hold the attention needed, even though it's got things that normally would be of high stakes. I mean, if any one of us had a family member that was trapped in an avalanche, we would be genuinely concerned, and rightfully so. It's a very relatable crisis to connect with, and yet the reason why I can't relate to it, and I guess why you can't relate to it, is that the characters haven't hit us with anything that makes us want to care about them. I mean, I was not too impressed when our introduction to Brooks was the fact that he's watching himself on an old DVD fail at this mountain that he's eventually going to be returning to, and he's obsessed with it. And it also feels like it's trying to convey the point where he hates what his life has become, even though there's a lot of good around it. And I don't believe that even through the dialogue, he's being truthful to himself. And at no point in the script does that ever come back to be addressed. So it just kind of feels disposable.
True. It's like little things appear here as if somebody thought of half an idea but never follows through with them.
Yeah. I think that might be.
That's a good log line for this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
One
I mean,
man thought of some
maybe
one man thought of some half-assed ideas that weren't completely terrible. But can he make a good movie?
that's your That's your trailer voice right there. No, I guess that's about as much as we can really say, but without getting into the spoiler parts of it. So with that,
No, but only if you brought, let's say, like Jack Nicholson, Eddie Murphy, Al Pacino, yeah, to act in this movie, and you also told them to really do a lot of improv and just do kind of their own thing. maybe there's a way that, like, just by sheer something they can intrigue you, but the script isn't strong enough. It would just be on the shoulders of people with talent that are doing something here that is unexpected.
Yeah, they themselves
Otherwise,
are being relied upon to punch up the script because
right,
the conflict of the man versus nature conflict is fine, and the beats work out well, but everything else for the characters is where it is lacking, and that tells me that the writer was focused more on the situation of the events as opposed to how they challenged the characters themselves. Because
right.
I was not feeling that Brooks felt very challenged in this. I mean, every injury he suffered just delayed him from knowing exactly what he needs to do and how to get out of a situation. And
Rick Brooks was a flip flopper.
yeah, there were some aspects that were like that.
He's like, oh, none of this. Now I'll do that. Oh, I won't do it. Now I'll do it. Oh, this and that. Oh, it's like
Indecisive, yeah.
he's just, right. There's nothing about it. At least, what would have been nice? Let's say he's a shell of a man, but now things are getting real, and suddenly he becomes sharp. As things become tougher, he becomes more sharp, more serious, more,
More
kind of
determined,
in control.
more in
Yeah,
sync, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Stronger as the odds get lower, he gets stronger. Whatever I'm looking to say, but I didn't even feel that. Like, even, oh, now I'm hallucinating. Am I with
Yeah.
clothes?
I think that
Is
was
these people alive?
probably
Are they not alive?
I think that was probably the intention, because there is this little monologue from Teddy that says, we wouldn't have made it this far without you. And it's like, okay, well, that's nice to tell me, but
Kind of rolled my eyes when I read that,
yeah, because I'm like,
personally, but
I didn't
yes.
see enough. I didn't see enough in the pros to say like we were shown this as much, because he wasn't
No.
confused, but he was doing everything was just kind of second nature to him. But it didn't feel like it was him getting back his ski legs, so to speak. Like it just kind of felt just of service to the situation, as opposed to, you know, the shell shock of there's the other part too. There's no great divide between the time he wiped out and him actually getting back to skiing again, because they've established that he still skis throughout his entire life. Like, even though he
Yeah.
wasn't competing anymore, he still was able to ski, and he was still in really good shape, even though he had like a knee brace and
Yeah,
whatnot.
that was also annoying. This is
Yeah,
flip-flop writing. It's like, is he, let's say he stopped skiing altogether. You know what I'm saying? But on the other hand, he skis all the time, but he doesn't want to ski. He doesn't want to teach the guy skiing, even though he skis. I don't know. And then he wants to watch his videos all day of him failing. But then when people talk to him about it, he kind of plays it off like he's the dude or something. And I don't know.
yeah.
It's like you said, it never really gets resolved.
Yeah, it's very indecisive. It would be far more interesting if it's like, yeah, he can just never strap into the skis again. And then when his daughter starts taking it up, he's like, he'll drive her to it, but he won't get on the slopes. He'll watch the teachers. Maybe he'll get frustrated when they're teaching her the wrong lessons. And everything inches him closer and closer to be like, this is where he belongs, but he just can't do it because there's still that fear. And there's also maybe the promise to his wife that he'd never get on the slopes again. And then he gets the money challenge, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna conquer my fear, because there's another thing. There's no fear for him to conquer. There's nothing for him personally to overcome as a result of this mountain. And even though when they try to establish it when he skis the first leg for the first time since his accident and he's victorious, it just doesn't feel like it was earned.
Yes, I agree with you. But what can we do? I guess it was a good effort
I
from.
will say, like, a couple more drafts, the writer could probably nail it. Just needs to get something more deeper with the
I
characters. As pretentious of a statement that is for me to say, it's like these are very superficial, surface level.
No, I completely agree with you. If I'm a studio executive and somebody brings this, I'd say there's something here. There's something interesting. I want to see more of this kind of avalanche thing. It's interesting. It's cool. But another draft. You got to do another draft. We don't care about any of those people. Another draft. That's what, if I was the executive, I tell the people, and that's what you were saying as well. And I would also say it. They delivered on one part of it, but it's not enough to make this a real good movie.
Yeah, it's got a first act problem, which is a rare a rare
Right,
critique that you get when you read a script. It's always a third act problem. The third act
right.
I
It
thought was
usually
okay. I'm not going to spoil
it
it, but
was
I think the final
all
resolution after the fact uh, was horrible. I didn't like it.
I
um,
would say that probably the first act is the worst,
mhm.
then the third act, and then the second one actually may work, sort of, but because of the things that weren't done well in the first and later in the third, it kind of feels just whatever. But
Yeah,
had the first and third been done correctly, the second one probably would have been good.
yeah. I think yeah. Well, the second one would have hit harder. I think that's the
Right,
thing, right? It just
right.
doesn't. I mean, it just
But
doesn't make me worry.
this goes back to that horror thing that I told you. It's like they're on an avalanche. It's very suspenseful. That's what the person was thinking, and he's not wrong. Just like when a horror movie, it seems dumb to you, but the second there's a guy with a machete, and they're like, "Oh, who's gonna live and die?" And there's like a big part of the movie where you just see people. What the first act, you set it up, you see all these characters.
Hmm.
They try their best to make you care about somebody. Although between you and me, in those kind of movies, I don't know if care is is a real thing. But then when you get to the kind of part where the people get killed, you kind of that's what the people came to see. But I don't think that's strong enough in an avalanche movie. I don't think people just came to see people getting hurt by an avalanche. I think that it's not strong enough on its own.
Yeah, and the only way it would actually resonate is if the writer said this is based off of a true story, and you could go reference it to the news and get an understanding of it. Because right now, as we're talking, and I'm thinking of all these other ideas, one idea that popped into my head is a Yeti with a machete hacking down skiers on the slope. I mean, just just some sort of silly horror
Or I
schlocky
have
film.
another idea.
Yeah.
I have another idea for what this could have been. A guy used to be the champion, now he's a bum. Some guy from the team comes in. You have to teach this kid. He's the future of the sport. And then initially he teaches him, but then there's some kind of issues or rift or something. And it turns out that this kid, or maybe there's like a bad guy influencing him, convincing him to go to that mountain. And maybe Brooks didn't even know. And he finds out that that kid went to the mountain. Brooks, against all odds, is like going there to try to stop him. And as he goes there, that's when the avalanche happens, or something like that. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
Uh, Anything to just add a bit of intrigue here, anything at all. Just why would he even go with him there and with the father? It's like only you can do it with him. He worships you, and then he worships his. He's excited to work with him. So the father's like, "I'm sad that he likes you." I don't know what all of this was weird, man.
Yeah. Well, that would be more interesting. That really would be. Um, so I guess let's take it to the final vote and
Or
thoughts.
or
Is
or he
this
says, we can't go on this today because of the weather, and the guy like defies him. Some douche that's from the team, maybe like the coach's assistant. The assistant coach is a douche, and he's really kind of trying to get rid of the coach. He doesn't even like that Brooks came back. He's trying to take control of the whole situation. And meanwhile, Brooks is doing good work with this kid, and they're on the right track. But he's like, "You got to do this mountain. You could do it." And he knows that Brooks wouldn't approve it because the weather just doesn't allow for it. And when Brooks learned, he quickly goes there in an effort to stop them, but it's too late. The avalanche happens. And then, the big villain is this assistant coach that instead of thinking of what was good for the team and for the guy, was thinking of himself. And then maybe even, as things develop in certain different ways, he could be an even bigger villain, like you described.
that's the other part. We have no antagonist in this script.
Nothing, nothing. The biggest antagonist is like Rick, the father, and he doesn't feel like anything to me. I mean, biggest antagonist. He's not really an antagonist, but
No, because
that's
this conflict's
it.
resolved right as soon as they get on the mountain. It's like, okay, we're here, we're good, let's go.
Right,
um,
right.
so would you give this a green light or a pass, Price?
Uh, I, I feel sad because it's not the worst thing I've ever read, but uh, only green light if there's another draft that fixes the problems here. If not, certainly not for a big budget Hollywood movie. If it's a situation that somebody can create this for, I've said this before. Somebody says, "Hey, we got $10 million. It's the Lifetime movie of the week. This is what we're filming." You know what? Do it. But if you're looking for something more than that, if you're looking for an actual Hollywood movie that some big company releases, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I'd pass this with the note saying it has a first act problem. Needs some more compelling characters. Come back when you fix that. Maybe we'll talk. Because it's
I
just
feel
it's
like
not
I
it's
feel
not
like I
up to
sold
snuff.
you on the idea of the evil assistant coach.
I'd rather I'd rather just a story needs a protagonist and an antagonist, and yes, Mother Nature can be an antagonist, but it's got to be constant. Um, Avalanches, they come, they happen, and then you survive it, and then maybe another one comes again, and then you survive it again. You need more factors other than more snow just coming at you, because it gets
I'm sorry.
repetitive.
Final thing. Final
Sure, yeah,
thing.
keep going.
Final. I'll leave you alone. I just
Leave me
because
alone.
no,
No,
it's in
keep
my mind
going,
all the
man.
time.
We've got time.
Okay, okay. The movie starts. The guy is already a coach. Okay.
Yes.
He's a coach, but he's not like an Olympic thing. He's a coach. I don't know what, but he sees this kid who has more potential, and it reminds him of his days. Now, his backstory is he was the best of the best, but back in the day, he kind of had his mishap, got injured. He did that mountain, and he was too cocky and arrogant and failed. He's trying to get this kid to not, who maybe himself has issues, to not go on that track. So from the beginning, Brooks is a coach. From day one, he sees this kid, he takes him under his wing, and meanwhile, the assistant coach, that's sort of a two-faced liar, he is already talking to the faculty about how this Brooks guy is past his prime, and he's not going to push the people to get the trophies that these group wants to get. And he's the guy, he's the future of this assistant coach. But meanwhile, he's kind of two-facing Brooks and trying to influence the kid and kind of take ownership of him until finally, there's some kind of opportunity. Maybe sponsors can come on board, spend money. They need to see something. And this assistant coach says, this is it. We got to bring him to this mountain. Imagine this kid does this thing, and we have the footage and everything. We're getting the backing we need for this entire team that we have here, and this is just going to help raise everybody's profiles here. And the guy says, nope, it's too risky. The weather and the kid's not ready. And then secretly, the kid's like, I don't know what happens to this guy, but the assistant coach picks him up or says, yeah, he couldn't make it. I don't know how they convince him to do this, but they somehow deceive him into doing this. And then the guy finds out. He goes there, runs, tries to stop it. He arrives. The avalanche happens. I think that's a better first act.
Definitely, because you've got conflict, you've got motive. You have a motive that's not driven solely on just I feel like I have to do this mountain. You've got something that where the assistant coach has a stature to gain as a result of these actions.
Right, and this is just on one foot when I said, and I realize it's not like it's not The Godfather, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I realize that, but I'm just saying that at least it gives me something. It uses the elements of him. He used to be something, but he's not now. He's now just like a coach of whatever. He's past his prime. A younger generation of even like a bureaucrat that's trying to get in his way. A younger generation of skier, and then these conflicts and the Mother Nature aspect starts to come together in a way that's just a little more compelling.
Yeah, I mean, you've got something that thwarts the safety of the ski, and then also the antagonist's mission, right? And then, or the antagonist sees a way to take advantage of that avalanche to help better achieve their goals. Like there's where you got two things working in tandem against our heroes. Like, you got to raise those stakes. You got to take advantage of it. It's a good take on a rewrite for this. And very different end result altogether, but you still have that
and
climax.
Imagine once the snow brought them somewhere and they're stuck. Listen, I'm not an expert at any of this. I don't want to say a cave or whatever it is that they're stuck in. But now, like it's like a fight for survival.
Mm-hmm.
And this assistant coach guy, he's willing to, like, in order to save himself, he's willing to throw these two guys to the wolves if he has to. Meaning, he's selfish. There's only a certain amount of food or water. He eats it. I'm not saying they're stuck in the snow and without food and water. I'm just trying to think of how he could be selfish and be like an even villain on location.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. God, that would be cool.
You mentioned. See, I'm also combining your idea. You mentioned the villain in the snow. That there's a villain. And I was thinking of the cliffhanger villain. There is no villain here. We need some crappy guy that set this up. What would have been maybe a Rick. You know what I'm saying? But Rick is just not convincing because he's just lame and there's nothing about him. That Rick, like you said, going back to your idea, that he thought that the son wasn't his, and as a kind of weird serial killer type of a guy that's gone off the deep end. He's actually actively trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And the other guy that he thinks that he's the father, now he wants to get even. I could buy that more. Mine was a different variation, perhaps, but all of these ideas work because it's not just that's like, hey, there's a mountain and an avalanche.
Yeah, it just kind of it felt passive. I mean,
Yes.
that's the other part too. Stories are about active characters. They're doing something. Ideally, in a story, you're witnessing an event that is one of the most significant events in the characters' lives. It may not be the peak one, depending on like if this goes into if that story goes into a franchise or something down the road. But it's like this should be a significant point in their lives, a turning point, if you will. Like you can replace it to Star Wars, like Luke Skywalker fighting at the Battle of Yavin. That's his most significant point of his life. The next part, well, he finds out Darth Vader's his dad. That's another significant point in his life. And the third point in Jedi, he rescues his father from the darkness. I mean, those are three significant events in his life. Each one builds on top of the other one, but they're also very much important. They don't feel derivative in the same manner as just a guy going through the motions of, I got to stop this bad guy and then come back and then like a reset, so to speak, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, that's as fortunately that's another double pass this week for the script, and a reluctant one too, because again, this does have potential.
They sure tried.
They sure did. I will say this. This is I would say for all of you out there, if you haven't read the script, I encourage you to read it because it shows you how important it is to make characters strong and resonant in your script. Because without that, all the other events, no matter how cool the set pieces are, no matter how interesting the twists or the way the actions kind of work against the characters, it doesn't mean much of anything if the characters don't make you care about them. And that's what I've got. That's my thoughts on this at the end of the day. Ideally, although it might be doubtful, but ideally, if Kevin Sheridan is listening to this, I want to say, first of all, congratulations on completing a script. It's not an easy task. I think you got potential. Give it another pass. See if you can get those characters a bit more compelling. Trim up some of the rescue with Kara stuff towards the second act and focus more on finding which one of those characters could be an antagonist. They don't have.
It's funny if Kevin listened to all of our comments and suddenly he's gonna be this big movie. He implemented all the changes, and suddenly it's a great script.
Hey, everybody wins in that one. We get a great movie.
Yeah, we got a great movie.
Yeah.
I will certainly be happy. Even if he takes our ideas one by one exactly as we said, I will still at least give him props that he listened and implemented.
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, that's something. Like again, it's all about the growth, right? And like every script, every movie, every TV show, it's never truly finished. It's only abandoned at a certain point where everybody's kind of exhausted. They can't get any more out of it. In this case here, I think he completed it a little too soon. There's room for more growth. It's not a huge undertaking for him to accomplish, which is also a nice note to say. Is like he's got some of the stuff there. He just has to pick one of those 5 characters that is on there, whether it's Zach as the antagonist, because that'd be something, a 16-year-old antagonist who kind of wants to show up his hero and also prove that he's better than him, or Rick and the little infidelity subplot I threw out there. Teddy, envious of his best friend, and that's why or maybe Teddy's in love with Brooks, and that's why he married Brooks' sister to get closer to her, into something about Mary type of plot. Who knows? I don't know.
There's a lot of options here. It's really, there's so many directions it could go, but it does need something.
Yeah, it does need something.
And naughty women could always help.
Sure. The ski by, there's like some cool outdoor hot tub springs on the mountain where naughty women are just scantily clad, splashing in the water.
Naughty women in the snow. That could be the log line.
Oh boy. Okay, with that, we're gonna call it there. I don't think we can go further than that. Price, I want to thank you for hanging out with me tonight, talking this script. Where can the lovely listeners find you? on the interwebs?
Well, there's my main channel, Price of Reason, where I do movie reviews, TV show reviews. Here and there's some occasional news. And then there's Price of Reason Live, where I do the weekly show, the Quantum Leap show that I do with you, Quantum Leap Revisited, where we go over classic episodes of Quantum Leap. So that's a great show if you like science fiction and Quantum Leap. I think people that do like that and see our show usually enjoy it. And in addition to that, I do something called the Night Owl on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where I talk about pop culture, news stuff, and gaming, along with my friend Dred Roberts. So that's recommended.
All right, so go check those out. And with that, I want to thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. If it's a holiday weekend for you, have a wonderful holiday weekend. Next week, there will still be a show on Saturday at 7 p.m. If it's live, you'll know. If not, it'll be a premiere, but it'll still be a fun adventure. So please stick around, or please come back next week for that show. And in the meantime, guys, remember, when it comes to great storytelling, it all starts with the script.